Welcome everyone to another episode of Retro Wrestling Reviews. Fredo Esparza here, and this week we look back at Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling's November 21st, 1981 episode. This episode was taped November 18th, 1981 at the WRAL studio in Raleigh, North Carolina. Bob Caudle and David Crockett are on commentary. They are quickly joined by NWA matchmaker Sandy Scott. At the opening of the show, he talks about there being many problems in the area, but they are looking to bring in more talent to Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. He tells them that later in the show, they'll talk about an incentive to bring in talent to the territory. That is then followed by the first match on the show, which happens to be Jay Youngblood beating Hangman Ricky Harris after a double chop. This was a pretty good match, but Jay Youngblood was fun to watch as he used a lot of quickness, really fast-paced action from Youngblood. This match was mostly Rick Harris trying to get out of headlocks, and whenever he did get out of them, as soon as he did go for something, Jay Youngblood would get him in another headlock. Youngblood got in several chops, and Harris late in the match until he finally hit the ropes and caught him with a double chop to get the pin. Really good match from Jay Youngblood. The guy, you could tell he was very talented. The little I've seen so far, and unfortunately he passed away at a young age, but there's still a couple of years where he's in Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling that I definitely want to watch, especially his tag team with Ricky Steamboat later on. Right now he's mostly, I think he was here for a bit, then he kind of wasn't there for a while, so he comes back in, I think, later in 1982. So after this match, it is then followed by Sergeant Slaughter and Private Jim Nelson, who are joining Bob Caudle for an interview. Sergeant Slaughter mentions that there was a fat Indian challenging him, along with Roddy Piper and Ole Anderson, and calling them all cowards. He tells them to show the Wahoo McDaniel interview. Slaughter tells Caudle he brought a contract and tells McDaniel to come out and sign it, and they can wrestle anytime, and he'll put up the U.S. title. That was then followed by a Sergeant Slaughter match as he beat Ken Hall with the Cobra Clutch. He yelled out for Wahoo as he had Hall in the Cobra Clutch. This was a really short match, but you get a lot from Slaughter. Slaughter squash matches, total beatdowns, because the guy was, I think it comes between, it borders on him becoming off very stiff, but he just does a really good job of roughing up his opponent in this match. They air a promo for the February 7th, 1982 show in Roanoke, Virginia. Ivan Koloff talks about his TV title versus Cadillac match against handsome Jimmy Valiant. He vowed to win and said he will enjoy watching Ric Flair beat Blackjack Mulligan Jr. on that show as well. Sandy Scott returns and mentions they have been scouting top talent from all over the world. He mentions that top talent in other sports make a lot of money, so they've had to come up with an incentive to have top talent come wrestle in the Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling territory. Scott asks Caudle, what do people want most in life? Caudle replies that it has to be money. Scott says they are purchasing a 1982 Cadillac that is worth between $17,000 to $20,000 and putting it up in either a tournament, battle royal, or any other type of match. One name they announced coming in would be Tommy Rich. They then follow by showing highlights of Tommy Wildfire Rich in action. Roddy Piper then follows that up and says he's the number one wrestler everywhere and wants a shot at the Cadillac. Ole Anderson and Sergeant Slaughter join him, and they too would like to win a Cadillac. Sandy Scott tells them all that they will have a shot at winning it along with Tommy Rich. He then tells them they should watch a video featuring another fellow who is number one, and that is Angelo Mosca, King Kong Angelo Mosca. Sergeant Slaughter then asks, as they're showing highlights of King Kong Angelo Mosca, he asks Sandy Scott if the guy Mosca is wrestling on the video is also number one too, pointing out at how often Sandy Scott was referring to everyone as a number one wrestler. Sergeant Slaughter isn't very impressed with Mosca because he's beating a smaller wrestler. Piper agrees with the Sarge. Jay Youngblood, Rick Steamboat, and Jake Roberts then join Bob Caudle for an interview. Youngblood grabbed the open contract that Sergeant Slaughter left and challenged him to a U.S. title match. Steamboat said he's focused on Roddy Piper and the Mid-Atlantic heavyweight title. Jake Roberts calls out Ole Anderson. After those interviews, we are then followed by a singles match as Jimmy Valiant beat Dick Rivers after an elbow drop in a very short match. Music played throughout the match, and of course, it being copyrighted music, they covered it up with a different type of music on the WWE network. But it's a very short match. I was not a big fan of the music playing during the match, but it's Jimmy Valiant. You kind of expect that. If there's one thing I've learned from watching a lot of handsome Jimmy Valiant in the late 70s, early 80s is he's pretty wild in the ring, and there could be music. There might not be music, but there's going to be some type of singing from Jimmy Valiant. There must be music in his head during all of his matches. He's very entertaining, though. Roddy Piper then joins Bob Caudle and says he's getting upset about people calling him a coward. He's upset that everyone wants him to wrestle Ricky Steamboat. He mentions he has a tape he wants everyone to see of a match with Ricky Steamboat. Piper shows a match between Steamboat and a masked wrestler that Piper picked out. Piper runs in and attacks Steamboat. He covers him for the pin, and the masked wrestler counts the pin. Piper says he will wrestle Steamboat in tag matches but won't wrestle him in title matches because he hasn't impressed him. Steamboat enters the ring and goes searching for Roddy Piper as this interview is going on. That is then followed by more promos for the February 7th, 1982 Roanoke, Virginia show, this time with Jay Youngblood and Ray the Crippler Stevens. They have a tag match scheduled for that show against Choi Sun and the Ninja. Stevens said he can't pronounce Choi Sun's name because it sounds like a Chinese soup. I mean, it is the easiest name to pronounce, but obviously Stevens is trying to make crack jokes. Unfortunately, it falls on deaf ears. Jay is more politically correct and does know who Choi Sun is. Jimmy Valiant then follows them and talks about his match against Ivan Koloff, and he wants to win the TV title from Ivan Koloff. They are then followed by Blackjack Mulligan Jr., who is Barry Windham, of course, and he talks about his NWA World Title match against Ric Flair. That is all then followed by the main event, which is Jake the Snake Roberts and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat beating the Grappler and the Super Destroyer via DQ due to Roddy Piper and Ole Anderson getting involved. This was the best match on the show. Very fast-paced tag team match. Piper and Ole Anderson show up late in the match ringside. Roberts and Steamboat gain momentum late in the match. All four men brawl in the ring. Steamboat goes for the pin on the Grappler, but Piper pulls the Grappler out of the ring. Piper and Steamboat start to brawl. Ole then gets involved. Wild finish. Everyone's just brawling, and basically the match ends up, ending in a disqualification with Roberts and Steamboat winning. After the match, Ricky Steamboat and Jake Roberts do a post-match interview. Steamboat mentions that Piper was smart because the video he showed earlier on the show was edited to only show what Piper did, and Steamboat asked that they air the rest of the tape. He mentions referee Tommy Young was knocked down during that match with the masked wrestler. He says he pinned the masked wrestler and that what Piper did not work. He demands a title match against Piper, and that ends the show. This was a really good episode. Show moved quickly, and with Youngblood, Steamboat, and Robertson matches, they worked fast-paced, fun matches. The interviews on the show were great as well. Fun show overall. Highly recommended. The tag match, the main event tag match was good, and also the Youngblood Ricky Harris match was very fast-paced. They did a really good job. Obviously Harris was going to lose, but they worked a really fast-paced TV match. The interviews, like I said, were great. Fun match, fun show overall. Highly recommend watching this episode of Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. Be sure to subscribe to the Retro Wrestling YouTube channel, where we'll have more wrestling show reviews as well as the Lucha World podcast and other content available. Also, be sure to visit the websites retrowrestling.com for classic wrestling reviews, and for Lucha, visit my website luchaworld.com for added content like Lucha Magazine write-ups, the Lucha Classica podcast, the Video Vault, the Retro Wrestling podcast. Check out our Patreon at patreon.com/luchaworld. Thanks again, everyone, and we will talk again very soon.